meeting live here at Grand Haven City Hall. Let's go to the podium, and Mayor Kayla.
I want to call to order this Grand Haven City Council special work session. It is February 4th, 2019. Linda, would you call the roll, please?
Bruger?
Here.
Scott?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Manetza?
Here.
Michaela?
Here. We have two items on our work session agenda this evening. First one is the library's annual report. So we're going to ask John Martin and Bert Brooks if they'll come up to the microphone and let us know what's been going on at the Loudoun District Library this year.
Oh, really not much.
Okay. Thanks.
Next.
I say that in jest.
Okay.
We're going to start this off. By the way, we should be able to get done with this in about 45, 50 minutes.
All right, no problem. Sorry, Jim.
We're going to start off with a quote and see who in this room will know who the person is that said this quote. When you are growing up, there are two institutional places that affect you most powerfully: the church, which belongs to God, and the public library, which belongs to you. The public library is a great equalizer. Who said that? You've got 1 minute.
Abe
Give me,
Lincoln.
No.
give me a time frame.
This person is still alive, we think.
Oh, we think.
Thank you.
We think he's still alive.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't
Ooh,
Keith
Richards.
Richards.
no.
Of course, the music man knows. It's right.
You actually do that, or you were just guessing? You knew that.
He took the hint from we.
What
think
was
he's
Keith
alive.
Richards doing when he thought about that? I'm not, he's. I would never thought about him as being real profound. I mean, he's a good musician, but.
Go.
All right, I'm impressed.
Artist also.
Yeah.
So far, it's an eye-opening presentation tonight. You have our annual report. Unfortunately, it's like 6, 7 months out of date, but it takes us a while to get all these statistical things together before we can present it. And we're here, Burton Brooks and I are here to answer any and all questions if you have any. But I thought what I would do is just point out a couple of things that are coming up that are not included in this report. We are going, at our board meeting tomorrow night, we are going to hopefully Burton will confirm this, approve a contract with a strategic planning professional, and we will embark on the process of asking the question of who are we and what are we here for, and so that process will begin hopefully in the real near future, and hopefully will be concluded before summer. And we'll use that to guide library services for the next few years and to try to meet the needs of our communities. We have, believe it or not, February 1999, 20 years ago, saw the birth of the Loudoun District Library. It was in February 99 that the library was reformulated from a city department to an independent taxing authority, the district library. It's 10 years this July since this, what we still refer to as new building, opened up. And related, and as we all age, things start to wear. And so we are going through the process. We have been going through the process the last several years of upgrading lighting to LED. We're hoping that in 2019 we'll be able to finish that 5-year project, and we have identified some concrete and brickwork on the exterior at the Columbus entrance and at the 4th Street staff entrance that needs to take place next year. And so we're gonna hopefully get that done first thing in the spring. Now that the snow has broken, it could be sooner, but we should be somewhere around mid-March, 1st of April on that project. Every year, I think this is, I think we're coming up on the 5th or 6th year, to kick off our summer reading program, we invite all of our local governmental units to bring over some big trucks. and park them out in our parking lot, make noise, and invite moms, kids, grandmas to come to kick off the summer reading program. And so I have to thank you and Pat and the DPW guys and the public safety guys for bringing over lots of big, noisy equipment that 400 to 500 little kids love to go through. And so the Aspen will be coming again. And I have to also, I just want to wrap up and thank Sharsazy and the community center staff, actually the mini golf people, for bringing over, letting us borrow mini golf clubs and balls. We set up a staff create a 9-hole indoor golf range in the library between the Christmas break for the school kids. And this year, did you participate?
No, I didn't, but I'm wishing I had. This
Well, now
sounds
you
great.
have to come next year.
Yeah, what a blast.
This is the 3rd year we've done it, and it just seems to get more popular. We had about 450 kids, and who knows how many parents and grandparents came through. Once again, I'm happy to report that there were no windows broken. Nobody slipped and fell on a loose golf ball that, yes, they do, run all the way through the building. But thank goodness no windows were broken. So basically that's all I have for you tonight, unless you have questions for us. And I know Burton has a couple of things that he would like to say as well.
All right.
Just like to thank the council for giving me the opportunity to serve on the library board. I am one of 2 members of the library board that were there originally. Mary Jane Belter, who now represents the school district, and I are the 2 that are on from the beginning. Also, at this time, I would like to just remind you of the people from Grand Haven who have served on the board, in addition to myself. Dave DeYoung, the current board member. Mary Sweet was on for a couple of years. Roger Kottner was on for about 10 years. And Jerry Gibbs was on the first year. Also, I'd like to mention the people who have served as our directors. Shar Zoot was our first director, and she came on board when we transitioned from a city library to the district library. Sandy Enders Ness was our librarian for quite a few years and was very instrumental in the building of the new structure. Carrie Fitzgerald was an interim for about a year or 2, and then we were very fortunate to get Grand Haven native John Martin for our current librarian, who is doing a bang-up job. Our library continues to serve a vital and important place in this community, and I am forever grateful that in the late 90s that the city council put together a committee and looked into the possibility of removing the library as a city department and making it, letting it form into a district library, which allows us to serve the Grand Haven community area and gives us many more resources than we would have if we were a city department. So we're just happy to be here to continue the good word. If there are any questions, we'll be glad to try to answer them.
All right. Well, for myself, I know that we are fortunate to have John being as the head of our library and for our board, that y'all are open to suggestion for all kinds of things that you normally don't think about in a library. And I for one, I love the cooperation between the library, the museum, and everybody else in the community, and just the you're reaching out to more things and to be such a active part of the community with bringing in speakers and sponsoring events and getting involved in all kinds of craziness, which I never thought about as a kid, what the libraries did. It was kind of a dusty place to go and find good books, but it wasn't, that was, so, so, and I appreciate what you guys do and how involved you are in the entire community, not just, and the whole, as far as the district library is concerned, so I appreciate that.
I think Jerry summed it up perfectly well for me.
Absolutely, and also having the citizenship going on down there for new citizens and that, I really appreciate you guys stepping up and going forward with that, and that's...
So we've got some more we don't have the actual dates lined up, but I just did get a confirmation the other day that they are coming back. They're reaching out, and they're going to be hosting a couple in a couple weeks in Holland at our friends, the Herrick District Library.
Very good.
But they will be back here, and I told them that they will be back here.
There you go.
To get back for Coast Guard Festival.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite a good service that you have there, and I really appreciate that a lot, because it helps a lot of the people that are here that want to become citizens. It makes it so much adaptable for them to come to the library, therefore. So thank you very much.
Maybe you can just announce the districts that you do serve here, that they participate, for a radio audience, that they don't get a chance to see them.
The governmental units that we represent.
We represent, the library represents City of Ferrysburg, Grand Haven Township, Robinson Township, and School District less Spring Lake Township. That's the geography, and the part of Port Sheldon that includes the Consumers Power Plant. That was when the library was organized, the option was available to use a school district map as a possibility for the geography of the library. And so that's why those are the organizations in there. Our library board, of course, as you know, has 8 members, but we've had very, very few tie votes. We are fortunate. We've had members of library board members who are extremely interested in the library, and they are workers. The library board is a working board. It's not like the stereotype in the old days when people were appointed, little old ladies were appointed to a library board so that they could have a tea time. This library board is a working board, and we do a lot, and we're very fortunate to have had good management, and John, of course, is our latest director.
Thank you for all you do. Appreciate it.
I thought you were going to say, we're very fortunate to have good management, and then we got John.
Well, he surprised you. Thank you for all you do. You're a vital community resource. You really are.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you much. All right, and our next item is the annual debt service report. So we're going to ask our finance director, Jim Bonamy, to come and tell us how deep in debt we really are.
I appreciate the library getting out of here faster. A lot shorter this time, but no.
Or maybe we're not deep in debt at all.
We're in good shape is
All
where
right.
we are. And I think that's the point of us looking at this as I'm already 3 weeks, well, no, actually about 6 weeks into the budget process. So I'm already thinking about where are we going in the future, what's going to happen. This is one of those parts of the game where I'm able to sit down and say, all right, these are our outstanding expenses into the future. Are we going to meet it? Are we going to do it properly? Are we going to keep all those bonds and notes paid? And the answer is yes. That's one of the current assumptions that I'd like to put down here is the city's council direction is not to default on any debt. And we haven't, as long as I've been here, so, you know, life is good. We have, actually, Grand Haven has never defaulted on any debt. And that bodes well for the city. It does give us a reputation of being financially aware. I get a lot of conversation with other people in my position in other communities, and they're digging out and they're trying to say, well, how do you always get this stuff going? And the answer is we're very careful, we're very strategic, and council has made some great decisions. And I can say I've only been a very small part of it from the standpoint of that this is what I thought we should do, but I don't know if it's going to actually work out or not. And fortunately, over the last 24 years, it has, so life is good. I think that's the point here in this exercise today. The graphic that's up there already is the DDA, and it looks complex. It is complex from the standpoint of all the information that you can glean off of that item. The green line at the top is actually what the original cost of the first bond for the DDA was. That was that $3,345,000 bond. We refinanced that, so the red line is actually the line of the cost of that bond and all the other obligations that the DDA has. The problem here, though, is that you've got that blue line about a third of the way down in all of that area that is debt service, and you look at that and you say, well, why is that there? Well, that's really what the ability of the DDA is able to pay. So we've been in this situation from almost the beginning that the general fund has been putting money in every year to be able to make sure we get the debt paid each year. In total, over the entire time, we're looking at about $3 million that will be borrowed from the general fund. City manager and I assume it's a borrowing until we're otherwise notified. So you see the purple area up there to the right side is really what we would anticipate a potential of getting reimbursed to the general fund over the next years from the DDA TIF dollars. A number of years back, we did set up for the DDA TIF and for the brownfields and the other TIFs that we were going to make sure that the city gets reimbursed for its support of those areas, and that becomes a bona fide debt that the DDA is required to reimburse sometime. Now, council does have the ability to waive that. Suppose in 2026 some new project might happen in downtown, and the DDA says, hey, we'd like to do this. We want to use our revenue for that purpose. That's a conversation at that time, and I really don't have a concern one way or the other in relation to that particular decision. That's going to be what the needs are at the time. So this is, I start off with this one only from the standpoint that it's probably more complicated than most of the others here, but it also says that there is a continuing cooperation between City Council, the DDA, and administration to be able to coordinate activities and try and do what's best for the community as a whole. If we go on to the next graphic, that's really what the DDA debt is all about. We had a $400,000 agreement with the DDA to reimburse work that was done over on Jackson Street. We had a small $50,000 loan for the Mindset company that brought in a nice new building downtown. And then you've got the two major bonds as far as that goes. So that's the basis for where we began with the DDA and carry forward. If we go on to the next one, we talk about the other problem that gives me gray hair. Grand Landing has been an issue all along. We originally were given the idea that we were going to be having a lot of development go on over there in 2006 with our first developer. And then in 2012 as well, we had another developer who is currently still working in that area. What this graphic tends to show is what happened over time. And yes, that the DDA, or the TIF district here, the Brownfield district here, is starting to get closer to paying for itself. By that I mean the light blue down at the bottom is actually taxes for the area, and that seems to be increasing. And I'm postulating that this year we're probably going to see another almost $180,000 increase in the tax receipts, because there have been some significant billing going on over there this past year. So that's looking good. We're starting to see the things being paid. However, those bars are pretty tall, and that 1.1 million on average is really, make that 1.4 million on average, is the outstanding debt that was set up because the city went in to do about $13.2 million worth of projects down there, public projects, in order to get it ready and make it available for private development. Obviously, we've not gotten to that point. We do have some assistance in that the city agreed with the BLP to go ahead and do $1.9 million of electrical installations before the current developer was in place, and that the BLP has an agreement with the city that it will reimburse over years until that's taken care of. That's about $180,000 a year in the largest section, but probably by 2022, that's going to be paid off, and that'll be a nice thing. You also see a little bit of a yellow box on four of the columns, and that relates to one of the successes. We'll get into that a little bit more closely, but one of the successes of the brownfield process, which is actually bringing dollars into helping pay for the debt service here. The purple on the top really relates to dollars that the City Council requested since 2011 in taxation of all properties, to be able to set those dollars aside so that we can continue to pay the bond. If indeed we chose not to do that and amass those dollars, we would have had probably in 2020 or 2021, we would have had a real serious issue, because we would have had significant dollars that we would have needed to pay for the debt service on the Grand Landing bond. By spreading that out over time, what it does is give us an opportunity to keep things rolling and keep the debt paid, and yet also turn around and look toward the future at some reimbursement that will cost. In a nutshell, we're okay. The plan seems to be working. I don't lose quite as much sleep about this one anymore, so that's a good thing. And I think we're going to see that continue. I think that there is going to be continuing investment out there over time, and nowhere near the amount that we had originally anticipated, but at least it is going on, and it is starting to really take care of itself. By the end of the debt, we will be able to start looking at using the revenue from the Brownfield TIF to look at other opportunities within the city, because that revenue that was generated was created with the idea that the citizens would be reimbursed for their tax dollars in some fashion in the future.
When does that tip end, Jim? When does the tip end on that property?
The debt service ends in 2022, but because we have this outstanding debt to the city, it's probably going to go out to 2035.
Okay.
So, and what you're doing is you're sequestering those dollars based on the debt that was created by paying off those loans over time. Now we're going to be reimbursing those dollars back to the general fund, or for whatever purpose City Council may decide to do in the future. This graphic actually shows the success story that a TIF can be. And this was the boat storage TIF, a $710,000 project that we put together in order to help the boat storage site get built. The purple columns there are the debt service over the years, and we've been able to make payments on that one almost entirely. There has been a couple of years where the cash flow didn't work exactly correct, but we resolved that. But really the thing you want to know on this graphic is the 4 bars, the 4 tall bars off to the right side. That is the full TIF millage, which we're allowed to collect for 5 years after the end of debt service issues for that location. We did not go ahead with a city agreement with that particular brownfield to be able to generate those dollars back to the city. There really wasn't a need. This one actually had dollars in hand, and so we did not need to borrow any city funds for this one. However, because we have an ability to levy that or the TIF premium over the next 5 years after the end of the debt service, we can turn that around to use for any brownfield purpose within the city. So there's 2 ways to look at it. One is we're already doing it at Grand Landing. We're taking much of that money to help pay debt service on another brownfield. Legal, appropriate. The attorneys say I'm okay so far and I'm not going to jail. Good thing. The other thing that this does, though, is that it shows that TIFs and brownfield TIFs and things like that are fairly complex and definitely long-term. You have to think out into the future in order to, 1, get the developments you're looking for, but then 2, be able to utilize those dollars in some fashion after the brownfields have solved their particular issues. So this one just shows that we've done well with that process there, and this actually kind of is a forerunner to what may happen with the TIF dollars coming from Grand Landing. Once those dollars are no longer needed for debt service, you're going to have significant dollars to be reimbursing the general fund for over the time. Let's see. The next graphic talks about the 2008-2017 infrastructure and refunding bonds. Basically, the thing here is that this is a UTGO bond, an unlimited tax general obligation, and it basically was created in 2008 based on a vote of the public. Doing so and making that happen got us started in some significant change in Grand Haven. We expanded the $9.4 million we got from this to $15.3 million in actual projects using funds from other city funds. So the little squares of red on top would be the actual height of the original bond. We went ahead in 2017 through city council action, and we refunded the bond under an advanced refunding process, which allowed us to lower the rate of interest significantly. So all of those little red boxes together look at about $300,000 worth of return to the city, or I should say return to the public, because those dollars are no longer needed. I don't necessarily, I have the option of levying whatever millage I need to for this, to make sure this debt is paid in full, but I don't need to go over 1 mil in order to pay that debt. We will start to see a slight reduction in that millage rate over time because the taxable value within Grand Haven is continuing to increase. So as the taxable value increases, the revenue generated will also increase if we left the millage the same rate. We're not going to do that. We'll be reducing that forward from here. The next graphic shows the unusual process. There's a number of cities that called me about this one, where we're using a direct transfer from the general fund in blue, the sewer fund in orange, and the water fund in green, as a direct transfer on an annual basis to reimburse the public safety and city or Washington complex projects that we had back then. We also used a portion of this bond to actually help us get the AMI meter reading project in place and get that done. Water and sewer are paying for that AMI portion of this bond. General fund is paying for the other part of the bond.
Excuse me, Jim. 7:30, we're gonna have to get on with the
Oh, okay.
city council.
Can we interrupt your presentation and have you, then we'll finish it up?
Up here, and that'd be okay too.
No, because I, I actually had a couple of questions, so. All right, at this point, we will just temporarily adjourn our work session and call to order our Grand Haven City Council meeting. So, and we will return to the work session shortly. So Linda, do you want to call the roll for the council meeting?
Berger?
Here.
Scott?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Manetza?
Here.
McCallum?
Here. Our invocation this evening will be given by Pastor Joe O'Neill of Nortonville Gospel Chapel in Spring Lake. Please remain standing after the prayer for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, council and everyone.
All right, welcome.
I want to say thank you to the council for their vote on November 19th prohibiting the establishments of marijuana businesses in our community. And speaking from personal experience, I had struggled with marijuana in high school and in college. And I've been free for about 37 years, but I'm just so glad and happy to be a part of a community that has taken those steps to protect the young people of our community. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
It's a hard decision. I know it's probably not always a popular one, but I think it's. But enough preaching, let's go to prayer. Father, thank you that you are the sovereign God. You're the one who creates the winds and the waves, and you're able to still them with your own power. For loving us, looking down upon us, and oh, how much wisdom we need here as we make decisions, try to do what's best for this community. Pray that you'll grant wisdom to the council, and to those who present ideas tonight, that we'll work together for the glory of God and the betterment of our community. We do pray as well for our president and the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader. We pray that they'll also fear you and look to you for answers. Please bless this meeting tonight. It's been a long day already for many of the folks here. I pray that you'll give them clarity of mind and fear the Lord in their heart. These things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, thanks very much. Next on the agenda is a presentation by our Human Relations Commission to give us their annual report. So we'll just ask our head of our relations to come to the council and hear your report.
I appreciate that. I know you received electronic copies of our report, but I just printed them out so you could take them home. I'm going to just hand them out to you now.
Okay. Thank you.
That's okay.
And I know you can read and hear what we did for the past year at the Human Relations Commission, but I just wanted to point out in this public forum that's going out across the community, something that the 10 members of the Human Relations Commission did over the year that we feel pretty good about. It's a program that's highlighted in the annual report called Dinner and Dialogue, and it's not something we made up. It's a program that was brought to us by former Assistant City Manager Vester Davis, who heard about it at a national conference on community management and brought it to us, and we implemented this template for a way for the community to come together, 12 strangers to come around a table together and in a facilitated discussion learn something about each other and different points of view. So there's another program out there called Make America Dinner Again. You might have heard about that. But this one is called Dinner and Dialogue. And thanks to some very generous sponsors who I want to recognize, they include the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation, the Artisan of Grand Haven, where we held 3 of our dinners, North Ottawa Community Health System, Skolton Fant, and Live Communities. We were able to raise $2,100 to put on the dinners so far. The first one was for the youth of our community. We had 2 adult dinners, and last week we were supposed to have a dinner at Gracious Grounds in Grand Haven to focus on accessibility in our community, since that's part of our footprint. And there was something called a polar vortex, so we're working on rescheduling that. But I just wanted to say that I've added some materials in your packets that show you kind of the handouts, the questions, the survey results. We're very grateful to Councilman Brugger for attending one of our dinners. We're hoping that this is the beginning and that people who've attended them will now hold them in their neighborhoods, and we are here to facilitate that and help. We're continuing to raise money through sponsorships, and we would be very honored if the rest of our elected officials and anybody else from our city government would attend one of these. Along the way, you will always get invitations when we have them. And we would love the community to reach out to us through the grandhaven.org website, find Human Relations Commission there, and reach out to us if they are interested in either holding, sponsoring, or attending a dinner. And I also just want to say thank you very much for your vote last 2 weeks ago, where you approved the sponsorship of the Lakeshore Ethnic Diversity Alliance Summit on Race and Inclusion, which will be held on June 11th at Grand Haven High School. They've held this at Hope College and at the Froenthal. It's the first time it's being held in our community, so thank you so much for welcoming them with that sponsorship, and the Human Relations Commission will be there as well, working on that event, which we have attended in the past. So I should also note that Lakeshore Ethnic Diversity Alliance has been very helpful in supporting some of our work with in-kind donations. So we've had a good year, and we thank you for being behind us on all of that. And does anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, we are to the approval of the consent and regular agendas. Pat, do you have any changes?
Yes, John, I did want to ask that under new business, item D, so item 12D, there's been some new information we got on Friday, so I'd like to propose an adjustment to that resolution, that we change it to be just a resolution to explore the option of reducing the Crosswind Airport runway footprint. So we limit it just to looking at that north-south runway and not looking at the overall airport study in any sense.
Okay, so we put a period after footprint?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other changes?
I have none, Your Honor.
Okay, anybody up here? Okay. So I need a motion to accept the agenda with that one change.
So moved.
Support.
Ms. moved and seconded. Comments or questions? Not, we will vote.
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes. All right, general business, call the audience. This is the first of 2 opportunities for anyone to address council on anything that they have on their mind. So if you just want to step up to the microphone, tell us who you are, where you live,
Thank you, Mayor.
et cetera.
I'm Diane Sheridan. I'm Executive Director of Grand Haven Main Street. I'm here to invite you tonight, a special invitation to join us for Restaurant Week, which is kicking off. Everyone that lives within the city of Grand Haven that receives a water bill should have gotten our little save the date cards last fall. And on one side were the holiday dates, and on the other side were our winter events, which include Wine About Winter, which took place a couple weeks ago, Frozen in Time, which is coming up on February 23rd, and Restaurant Week. On the card, we had originally planned for that to kick off on the 18th and run through the 24th. That way our restaurants could still do Valentine's Day weekend, and you know, we would have Restaurant Week after that. Well, we had some changes, and we're having our 5th annual craft beer crawl on Saturday, the February 16th. And so we're going to go ahead and open Restaurant Week 2 days early. So if you're going out for Valentine's Day, you can enjoy Restaurant Week specials of $8 lunches, $15 dinners. We're just getting the applications, and we're going to be putting menus on our website, which is downtowngh.com. So I invite you to come out. If you want to do the craft beer crawl, that's always fun, what I hear. And then we have Restaurant Week. And I just want to do a little plug. Morning Star, who is only open for breakfast and lunch, as most of you know, does open for dinner 4 nights during that week. And they're always a sellout. They open at 5, and they have room for 25 tables. So please come and join us for Restaurant Week.
All right, thanks very much.
I think the Frozen in Time should have been last week.
Good point. Hi there.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. My name is John O'Connor. This is my business partner, Kyle Van Streen. We are the owners of Long Road Distillers in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And we're very excited to be with you all this evening and appreciate the opportunity to address this body. We know later in the agenda this evening you'll be discussing the proposals for the Grand Depot space. And I just wanted to thank you again for consideration. I hope that you had an opportunity to read our proposal from last year, as well as an updated proposal we sent over late last week. We're just very excited about the opportunity to join the community here in Grand Haven if given the chance. We've been for over a year now looking for various spaces in Grand Haven to potentially locate our a second or third location, I guess, of our existing facility. And you know, while we've looked at a lot of other spaces, the historical nature of the depot just really excites us as two guys who leveled buildings and have taken the time to remodel one carefully and try to respect its history and integrity, and at the same time bring it to modern functioning standards for a business. We're very prepared to make a very significant investment in that space. Would love to be a new business to help create some jobs here in Grand Haven, additional jobs in Grand Haven in this very vibrant community. And we'd love to be a family-friendly food and beverage destination for folks year-round. And so we'll stick around and look forward to your discussion and conversation, and be happy to answer any additional questions you might have at that time.
All right, well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jeff Beswick, and I'm a resident of Grand Haven Township, 13623 Hoffman Court, and we have a business downtown here at 233 Washington. I want to just comment on a couple of airport matters that you're addressing tonight. First, as to the evaluation of the north-south runway, the aviation community members that I have spoken to strongly object to any consideration of the limitation or closure of that runway. Here's why. For airplanes, we take off and land into the wind, and for light planes, and especially airplanes that utilize a tail wheel like mine, it's especially important to be able to take off and land directly into the wind. When winds are out of the southeast, south, southwest, or northwest, north, northeast, then the north-south runway is a critical option for people like me to utilize our aircraft and get where we want to go. It's true for me and for others, aircraft as well. When I look at the aircraft based at the Grand Haven Airport, 16 of the 49 airplanes that are based there are tailwheel aircraft, for whom the north-south runway is especially important, and 39 of the 49 aircraft based there can use and benefit from the north-south runway. And so for all those reasons, it's critically important for many of us who maintain our aircraft at the airport to continue to have the availability of that runway. My second comment relates very briefly to the city's ongoing comprehensive evaluation of the airport. The aviation community suggests that a critical component of your analysis requires an answer to this legal question. What are the city's obligations under its current FAA and MDOT grant agreements, and what are the consequences of a breach of those obligations? The aviation community doesn't understand why a comprehensive analysis of the airport doesn't begin by asking to clarify and confirm what legal obligations the city has under its existing contracts. If the city's not obligated to continue to use the airport for 20 years or indefinitely, then we understand that the city might reasonably review various options. If it is, however, required to do so, I don't know why we would waste a lot of time on other evaluations of options. And so we just suggest that the city would begin its analysis of the airport by asking its attorney for answers to what are the city's legal obligations under its contracts and what's the consequences of breach, and to share that information with the aviation community and the public at large before you begin other investigations.
All right, thank you. Stay tuned as we get to that part on our agenda.
Hi, Kyle Doyon. I live downtown and my business is also downtown. I love coming to these, but I'm super excited right now to see that we're looking forward to, finishing out and doing the work on the depot building. And I'd like to give my support of Long Roads. These guys are a great business and will be a great addition to our community too. Seeing them come in as an outside source looking to move into this city and add growth and new business here really is such a great thing that we all want to see, and we all definitely love seeing that outside mindset of people moving into the city and bringing in new business and new jobs and all of that. What they provide in the food and also their service and their professionalism and everything is definitely a
All right, thanks, Kyle. Anyone else want to address council at this point?
Your Honor?
If not, we will, yes, Pat.
I just wanted to take an opportunity. I don't think I've sat down and met with Bob Madreski just yet. But I looked around the room, and I don't want to profile anybody, but the guy that looks like a plumbing and mechanical inspector, short sleeves, he looks like a working guy. And so I wanted to introduce Bob, because you're going to be voting on that during the consent agenda.
Oh, okay.
And I told Jennifer, I'll try, if I don't get a chance to introduce myself, I'll try to guess which guy is. And just lucky.
Thank you for the opportunity of looking at the contract. I serve the communities on both sides of you, and they're, I believe, very satisfied with my commitment and service, and I hope you guys choose to go with this option for you. Thank you.
All right. He's got a nice smile, and it's always good to have a smiling face on your inspectors.
Builds confidence in me already. So.
Yeah. All right, anyone else? If not, we will move on and ask Jim to come back and continue talking about his awesome graphs.
The problem now is that can I be mercifully brief, and I think I can. Can we go to the next graphic, please? In 2016, the city manager came up to my office with this great idea that I should contact a bunch of cities and ask them for what their water and sewer rates were and try and figure out where do our water and sewer rates fit in. And I just wanted to let you know that the graphic, the light purple there, is what I anticipated would be 5 years out for all the rates that we had then, 2% per year for each of those other communities. You see, however, that Grand Haven's rates, both water and sewer combined, are significantly toward the left side there. So I just wanted you to know that this is still there. We know we have water and sewer needs and capital needs, and this is a part of our looking forward and how are we going to gain money and reserves to be able to make that happen. The last graphic I want to talk about is what the future is. What is our forecast? And the answer is, I think we're going to do pretty well for the next number of years. And I say that very carefully because obviously I'm a finance guy and I'm not supposed to be wrong anytime, so I'm trying to work that out. Where you see the green bars rising off the graphic, that's the return from the Grand Landing Brownfield TIF. And the reason you have so many of those is that when the city started to ask the public to participate with keeping those bonds paid, the idea was that, well, gee, if we're going to be holding that money, we should also be charging interest on holding that money, which we have. When we get to the point in 2022 where the bonds are paid off, we will then have roughly about a $7 million obligation from the Brownfield TIF back to the city's general fund, including, you know, principal and interest. And we will continue to charge interest over those years in green. The blue bars toward the right side, that's our local site remediation revolving fund. And that would be the same thing that we're currently doing with the boat storage fund, where we're going to be able to sock away some real cash to be able to use that for future brownfield opportunities within the city. So to me, that one is probably the one that says we are really looking forward to a very bright future financially. I'm sure there will be questions and comments and concerns all through this time, but so far so good, and I hope we can keep up that pace. I am now being mercifully brief.
All right. Well, and I don't, you know, I'm going to throw this out there because I don't know the, on the graph about the Grand Landing Brownfield refunding bond forecast, if you can scroll back, I'm curious as to, after the 2022, I think there's one, is there one more? No, that's.
One more.
Next one up.
Next one?
There it
Okay.
is.
What would the next bar look like after 2022? What,
You
can you?
remember on the boat storage graphic just after that, you saw 5 bars which were in orange. That next year, all of those dollars look like they are going to be available to the city for other than paying off debt service. That debt service will end as of the end of this graphic.
So after these many years, 2022 is the year that we can celebrate the Grand Landing being that debt being complete, and it's going to start paying us back.
And I think that's where the idea of the TIFs really does work, is you're working in the short term to create more investment within the community. That investment is going to pay for itself by sequestering those tax dollars for that purpose. But then once that's done, once your bonds are paid off, then you have money coming in that may be used for brownfield purpose or other purposes, such as reimbursements to the local unit of government. That's where the brownfields story becomes very positive and very beneficial to the community. It takes a long time to think about it because we started the brownfields in 1997.
Those purple bars up there, if you took those and stacked them out beyond 2022 with 4% interest, I believe 4% interest we're going to pay ourselves, that will carry out beyond 2022. And then when that's all paid off, you're paying yourselves back. You've loaned the Brownfield Authority money to make these debt payments. So that's an eligible obligation. So after that, probably 4 to 5 years, if the city council at that time decides to let it ride, they could let it ride for another 5 years to use those funds for other brownfield projects, if you have any. Quite likely at that point, it's a substantial amount of money. You want it all to go back on the tax rolls, and everybody will get their tax revenue at that point. And of course, in the absence of all this rather complex financial information, the taxable value out there was darn near zero. arguably was a negative for us. So it's all good news.
Yep.
That, can I, you just said, can you scroll down to the next chart? Because this is what you were referencing, Jim. So those orangish brown bars is what happens in 2023 with, at current projections.
Particular situation,
for Grand Landing.
There was nothing additional that was added to the financing for this brownfield. So the most we can do is that 5 years for the local site remediation fund, and or using that local site remediation fund to pay for brownfield debt expenses in the Grand Landing fund. After this point, these taxes then all go back and will go back to the taxing units, and that will basically close this particular brownfield.
So, and Ashley, can you go back up again? Pat, you said the purple or the blue plus 4% of the purple. So the last number there is 8,900, 878.
170,000.
Okay, so that plus 4%.
Well, yeah, the 655,950 will be, compounded each year from 2017 out to 23.
Okay.
All of those numbers, Jim's running a chart, and he's got a payback plan in place that will recover those funds 23, 24, 25, 26.
Yeah, that last graphic that I talked about basically showed in the green bars the dollars coming back.
And are those funds, those are restricted to go into the brownfield fund for the first 5 years, and then after that they become free for city council to designate elsewhere?
I think we can do it just the opposite way.
Okay.
We go ahead and reimburse the bona fide loan from the city in full, because that it's going to be a situation that we're going to have to look at very closely, because you're using tax dollars from other taxing units, and they're going to see your dollars come back to your general fund for whatever purpose. Well, they need to understand why and what has happened all the way through that point. I think we can make that argument very well with all the other local units. Those dollars then could be sequestered and used by the city council for anything that they would normally choose for the general fund, which is just about everything.
Who are the taxing units that you speak of?
Sorry?
Who are the other taxing units that you speak
The
of?
county, the schools, the state education tax, the ISD.
I gotcha.
Library, the museum.
Yeah, library, all the taxing units.
Everybody.
It's on your tax bill.
Okay. Everybody's going to want to share that, but we have to present a case that
It's ours.
it's ours.
Yeah, well, we've been bleeding since 2017.
Right.
Right.
And so we're just getting back what we put in.
Yep.
So we did check with the attorneys back in 17, and they said, yeah, that's an eligible obligation.
All right.
We entered into a formal agreement with the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority to loan them that money, and they agreed they would pay it back once all the other obligations were met.
Summed it up well by saying we've been bleeding since 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Gary, you go ahead with your other.
Well, no,
piece.
I
You were
was-
right on point with that one.
I was, I'm just, like I said, it's a couple more years down the road, and we've been faithful to our obligations, and Jim has been, and Pat have worked very hard to keep us, to complete this very long project through some rough waters. And we're about to come out on the other side of that, and it's going to be, it's looking good for us. I think it's going to show a rosy picture. Besides, we've got some, if anybody remembers back what it looked like before the redevelopment happened there, it's been some rough waters, and it's been an interesting time. But what we have there today, as opposed to what we had there when we started, is a whole lot better. So we'll keep working at it. But I think, we're seeing the end of the light at the end of the tunnel here.
As the previous mayor says, it was patience. You
Yes.
got to have patience with
Yep.
it. And that's what it was. I've been on here long enough. I've seen this from the start, and now hopefully I'll be here to see it to the finish. But what we had down there to start out with was, let's see, ASP Plating, which was a highly pollutant, they did a lot of pollution down there. Then you had a junkyard, which antifreeze and everything else, right next to the South Channel. Anything you could ask for that you did not want close to water, we had there. By what we have today is definitely better than what it was. It's not done yet. There's still going to be some more investment, and as investment goes in, as you said earlier, James, is that it's going to end up being more tax base for us to come in. There's still a lot of space out there and a lot of development to be done. I've been very patient and thankful that we've had you at the helm, steering that rudder, like you say, the boat going down that river there, and you've been steering it for us, and we've been listening, and we've been doing our own observation of it. And by your great direction and helping us with this, all of us together, is that we are finally seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. So it's been a long time coming, and it's not that far off. So thanks again, Jim. Thank for you and in your whole department up there, and making us aware of every little step that goes on and helping us out making the right decisions. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
I got a couple questions for you, Jim. Is this going to, I guess a general question first, is this going to come to us or at the next council meeting and we're going to accept it, or is this just some sort of, just a report?
Just information.
Okay.
That's the way I plan it. There really is not a need to approve the document or anything of that nature. It was more for me, it's more to let you know there are so many facets of the budget that are going to go into place. This is one of those things like the capital plan, which we can pull out separately, thinking about that one item. And that's why I like to do this. I think it gives us a place to be able to say, okay, we got up to this point, now we took the next step to this point, now we're going to go forward from there. So it creates that idea that a budget is not just a bunch of numbers, but is truly a plan for the city.
Yeah, oh, that's good. Since we may not see this again, wanted to point out on page 13, which is the first graph, it's the DDA revenue debt analysis. Keep going up, or mine says page 13. Yeah, that one.
One more back.
It's the back of 13. Yeah. You've got the graph. If you scroll down to the second paragraph below the graph, or third paragraph, I think, Jim, you say this will be reimbursed to the general fund in later years once the bond is paid off. And I'm just picking up on the word will. I've always been told that at council discretion, that'll be reimbursed, but council may
You probably change that will to may, yes, you're very correct.
Yep, you use may everywhere else except that one, and yeah. I mean, I like that. I think that's what should happen, but I just want to know. And then the I had two more comments, but do you have that? The one thing I would love to see in this report, and I understand it's not coming back to us for adoption, but oh, sorry, and this I just printed up real quick at home, and it's not accurate one bit, and so I removed city of, just so nobody thought this was actually Grand Haven. You've got a lot of great charts, and they're spread out, and what I miss is one chart, which I think could be a pie chart, that says, here's all our debt, here's what the debt pie looks like. And then, I put little notes on there, date that it started, current balance, and the current balance is shown in the pie chart. Just because I can't, in one glance, look at this report and go, oh, we've got $10 million in, debt, or whatever it is, or in this category.
20.
Okay. I don't want to wait till 2020, but you got the idea. That would be great to see that, Jim. And then the last thing is, in your comments, you can go back actually, thank you, Ashley, to your report. The last page, you put some, I guess I'd call them recommendations, more than reflections, recommendations. Under the Grand Landing TIF, point 1 is about a special assessment being negotiated with the developer, and development hasn't taken place at the pace that was initially anticipated and presented from that developer. And then point 2 is the city could and should encourage development and investment and so forth. I'm contrasting that with the rosy picture that was just painted, that in 2022 we're out of this anyway, so maybe this is not necessary, or do you feel that there are other encouragements that we should be carrot and stick putting in place with the developer that would help speed that up at this point, or is it a moot point?
It would be a moot point in 2022.
Okay.
So
3 years.
And it is purely a policy decision on part of city council, so that would be the way I was looking at it at the time I wrote this. I can see, though, that maybe it's not to be as strongly stated as it is there.
Okay. Well, and I think you had explained to us at a few council meetings ago that the developer had, forgotten to pay something to us, and you had to go after them to get it. You were successful in doing that, but when I pair that with statements like this, I think maybe we need to be a little more forceful. But did we get our money back, or our money, or whatever the payment was that we were owed?
Still working on it.
Which then further reinforces why I think these statements are good. And I've been saying that for a while, so I don't know. You two are looking at each other nodding. I like that.
Oh, yeah, we're keeping the pedal to the metal, and the sooner the investment happens, that picture would only look rosier. What you saw is the least rosy it could look. So if the development happens, it'll happen more quickly. Those paybacks will happen more quickly. It'll just accelerate our exit and return money to city and the general fund more quickly. So we're keeping that out there, and those special assessments are out there that could be reimposed at any time the council decided to do that.
Okay. Well, and I have been a fan of that and in favor of that for a number of years, in particular because Red Star Shores, I think that's their name, had made comments to us during the approval process that we're in a hurry to get the Grand Haven citizens their tax money back, so if you approve this, we can get going. We approved it, and they really haven't gotten going, or they've gotten going at a minimal pace. And I don't know, the taxpayers are taking it in the nose, in my opinion, and I think we should do more. There you go. All right. On that rosy note, good job, Jim. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, all I can say is that while I appreciate the attempt to simplify debt and put it in a simple picture and all that, there's nothing simple about it. Debt's a tool. It can be managed well, it can be managed poorly, and I think you're managing it well. And I think that what we can't lose sight of is the interdependency of these debts, how the timing of them is all different, and how it's one thing may compensate for another, or some things may take a lot more effort and management. As far as Grand Landing goes, we knew we had a very challenging developer out there when we got in bed with them. And so we're doing what we can with it. And we know that there will never be the level of private investment there that we envisioned in 2006, 2007, when we set ourselves on this road. That just simply won't happen, so the payback is stretched over a long period of time. The special assessments are there. It's a kind of a guarantee, which may or may not ever be imposed, but I don't think that there's a lot to be gained by it at this point in time. They are actually building something, pretty much what they committed to build. So whether or not we can use that and accelerate their investment or get something back out of them, I guess I'll leave that in your hands to figure out how best to use that tool, but that is really all it is. But yeah, I think that you're doing a decent job of managing the debt, and I think that, as has been noted, in time, things will work out well, and we're trying to avoid taking on a lot more debt. So, as you say, stay tuned.
2020.
Kind of seems to me like the last couple of years they've did accelerate a little bit. I think they've accelerated to where from where the first few years where they didn't do much of anything, and the last couple of years they kind of accelerated a little bit more. They're not where we want them to be, of course. I mean, they're far from where we want them to be, but they're making progress, and I think they've accelerated a little bit than what actually I think a lot more than what they were before. So I think the pressure you're putting on them did help, in my opinion. So, but you're right. We are behind, and if they owe us money, we need to get that money out of them. So, thank you, Jim, for all you're doing, and Pat, and just keep the pressure up and hope we can get some of that money back.
Anything else? Nope. All right, we're good. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Always good to know where we're at. So, at this point, the consent agenda. So Linda, would you read that, please?
To approve the special council meeting, executive session, and regular meeting minutes of January 21st, 2019. Approve the bills memo in the amount of $268,418.34. Approve the terms of Michigan Paving and Materials Change Order Number 1 in the amount of $329,129.71, which is a reduction of $12,705.04 for the rehabilitation of the apron, including taxiways, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Approve the terms of the Prine and Newhoff Professional Engineering Services Agreement Amendment Number 2 in the amount of $11,000 for construction phase services for the beacon installation, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. That the poverty exemption asset test for property valuations to conform with the audit of minimum assessing requirements conducted by the State of Michigan Tax Commission. Set the fines for failing to timely file a property transfer affidavit, and to allow the assessor to waive or apply the fine as appropriate to the individual transaction to conform with the audit of minimum assessing requirements conducted by the State of Michigan Tax Commission. And approve the agreement with West Shore Inspections LLC to conduct mechanical and plumbing inspections for the city of Grand Haven, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for these items on the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions?
I do, Mayor. On item C, this is a question for Pat. Approval of the terms of Michigan Paving Materials Change Order Number 1 in the amount of $329,120.71. This was originally voted for in May, from the notes, of 2018. And at that time, I voted not in favor of it, pending a better business plan from the airport on what their plans were for making it more successful and financially viable. Does this reset the date that goes on the 20-year payback time frame, or does that stay the same and all we're doing is saying we're going to pay $12,705 less?
Just a reduction.
Yeah, this isn't the contract with MDOT, this is the agreement with the contractor, so this wouldn't change the date
Okay.
that we accepted the monies.
Okay, so that's already done and good. So then I'm in favor of a $12,000 reduction. I love that. And then letter D, is that beacon a requirement from MDOT, or is this, or excuse me, from the FAA, or is this something that we think we need a new one, or what's the backstory on that one? I see the presentation from the airport, but it doesn't say why.
The old beacon had long run its course, and the new one is much more efficient and easy to operate, and it is being paid for with federal and state funds. It's been in our capital plan for some time. I know we've been talking about this for some time, so it's been a long time coming. It's a planned expense. Whether or not it's absolutely necessary, I can't definitively answer that, but I believe it's already done.
Oh.
So.
And it costs us $550?
Yes.
But it did add $9,900 to the 20-year federal tab. That's would be my concern. We've already done this?
Agreeing to continue to operate the airport.
For 20 years. Yeah. And accepting $9,900. Okay. Why is it retroactive that we're approving it? Why didn't we approve it on the front end? That's already been done. That seems out of our normal way of doing things.
Well, we questioned the application of the addition, the $11,000, and got back some information from Prine and Newhoff. It's just they're part of the project, and it should have been included earlier and wasn't. The rest of the project is all properly approved, so this was just the professional service.
Okay.
That has been rendered.
Gotcha. All right. And I understand Bob's point that it only costs the city out of our cash fund $550, but it does add to the amount of money that we may or may not have to pay back to Mr. Beswick's point earlier in the session. So I'm going to vote no on this consent agenda. I'm very much in favor of everything else on it, but I wanted to make sure I made note of that, especially the plumbing and HVAC inspector, who even when he tells you no, has a great smile, to Jerry's point.
You know, it's really not in the words and the way it's done. So that's all, that's where it's bottom line.
All right, thanks. That's all my questions.
All right, anyone else? Not, we are ready to vote.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
Bruegger?
No.
McCaleb?
Yes. And on to the next item.
Next item is under new business. This is to approve the proposal from Ebbenmarsh in the amount of $25,900 for design services on exterior repairs and improvements at the Grand Haven Community Center, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. The Community Center Board and the administration recommend approval.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
I'll support.
All right, so Pat, or you want to give us, or is Dan, somebody, if anybody has questions?
Did you guys have some pictures to show tonight? The mayor had asked that we show some pictures of some things that exist that might look like what this might look like, just to give you a better idea of what the exterior treatment might be. So Shar went online and found a number of, I don't know if she Googled porches.
Yeah, Shard put together this PowerPoint slides, just for some pictures to what the fencing could look like. I know there was some concerns about having it look kind of institutionalized, so we wanted to try to bring some real world stuff to you instead of just a rendering. So here's just a couple of different looks at it. I talked to the building inspector, Phil Brummel, earlier today, and the fence height would be 42 inches. So that's about to right here. If you were sitting in an 18-inch chair, I measured it, the fence would be about here on myself. So that would, you'd still be able to look over it. It wouldn't be an obstruction. I mean, down on the far end, I guess the west end of the wall, if you were looking up at it, yeah, you'd be looking through a fence, talking to the people on the deck, but they would be able to see over it and into the street.
Wouldn't give you the I'm in jail kind of feeling?
No, no, I don't think so at all. Just some different looks for different tables. I know there was some concerns over, square tables, sliding chairs, what are some of our options. So here's just some things to look at, and there was some other pictures that Ebbenmarsh got for us in your packet. Since I forwarded this through, I understand that what we want to look for is tables like we have down at the stadium. Which are the Victor Stanley, the round Victor Stanley picnic tables.
That Victor Stanley is nice stuff.
It is nice furniture. There's a lot of different options. We go round, square, solid benches, slatted benches. I mean, there's a million different options. So if council wanted to see those, I can, get on Victor Stanley's website and bring some of that to you. There's just another look at a fence and kind of the relation to a chair, where it would be on that deck.
Okay.
Wood tables. My preference would not to have free chairs. Something heavier and harder to move is always the best, like for maintenance. And yeah, just another look at the fence. The fence will have to be pretty stout. I discussed code requirements with Phil also, and it has to be 50 pounds per linear foot is what it has to absorb. So we're not going to just be able to drill it into the limestone cap and have it hold. It'll have to be pretty stout and tied into the wall. Other patio options. Different looks for the retaining wall, because we don't have to go to the brick and try to match the building. I mean, there's definitely a lot of different options for the retaining wall. There's the round chairs with backs, seats with backs, so a little bit more comfortable and probably very heavy. And that's a Victor Stanley bench there. Solid mount, so you can get them where you can pick them up or mount to the surface. This is some stuff that Avonmark sent over, so this different company, you know, umbrella options, what kind of tables we wanted, so. And then you had the breakdown of the proposal from Avonmark, whether it was a one-time fee for everything, or if we wanted to piecemeal it. That should have been in your packet, the prices on that.
Those are just different Victor Stanley colors with the one with the umbrella. But those are the ones like we have down at the stadium.
Okay.
Are pretty resilient.
Very good, yeah, very good quality.
Hard to move. They won't move around on you, so I have to try.
It takes, yeah, 3 stout people to get them to move.
Or 2 like
not carry.
Or 2 like Pat.
All right.
You're pretty stout, Pat.
Well, I found it interesting, the library is doing the same sort of, finding the same kind of structural work that they need to be doing on their building, some of their, I'm not sure if they said exactly what it was, but I'm thinking we're in the age range where they're all there at the same time, and they're all running into the same kind of issue, so I think it needs to be done. We're good.
Correct. So I guess I just need the direction of if we want to go for the whole shebang or just, a little bit.
Anybody got any input on?
Well, I guess my thought would be that.
Get her done. Go ahead, Bob, I'm sorry.
Okay, my thought would be that, I mean, looking at the cost of doing all the design in one contract versus piecemealing it is so great, that the difference is so great that it doesn't make any sense to break it down. As you know from previous discussion, I'm not particularly supportive of redoing the entry. But pulling that out of the project and saying, let's do the rest of it, doesn't really save us money on design.
Correct.
So I would say you would design everything. Now, when it comes time to approve the actual contract, I might not support it, but I think designing it all at once is the most economical and comprehensive and thorough way of doing things. So I think it's the right way to go.
Yeah, the good thing about the entryway, I know that's a pretty pricey project, but everything, all the concrete work can be done. We could design the handrail, so if we wanted to put the glass in, we could just pull the hand railing out. The hand railing would have to be changed, and the concrete work will be pretty much the same whether the glass entry there is there or not.
Well, I think that as the design progresses, that some of these options become more clear and more versatile and more amenable to everyone's opinion. I think at this point, I think the real question is, do you want to piecemeal this out and pay more for the same design work, or just do it at once and have one scope of work and project description? I think that makes the most sense.
Sure.
I like that picture, actually, very nicely. I don't know if you took that, but took it and covered up the rust and it looks great. There's no problem.
Well, this is what kind of they deal with there. That wind just swirls in that, so if it's not snow in the winter, it's leaves in the summer.
The foundation looks good right there now.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Don't you think? Right along that wall there where the hole used to be?
No foundation. Well, I'll second exactly what Bob said. I'm just looking at the actual numbers, $25,900 to design the whole thing now, or $41,600 to piecemeal it. It's a no-brainer to do it all, so that makes perfect sense to me financially.
Well, if you have all the plans, then you can decide
what you don't want.
What you want to do. Yeah, so makes sense. You still have a plan, so.
Go for it.
We're all set. All right, I think we're ready to vote.
Well, before you vote on this,
Okay.
if this is approved tonight, they will get going on the plans and then they'll go out to bid.
Oh, okay.
Do all of that, to bring it to get bids in and have those bids available to then be presented to city council.
But we can word the bids so each, it's itemized. Yeah, so if we wanted to leave out the entryway, most of the other stuff needs to be done, but.
Well, quite often you can have voluntary ad alternates or various options in bids, so those options may be available to us when the time comes. It still makes more sense to do this as a single project.
All right.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes. Thanks, Dan. Next item.
Next item is to approve the proposal from Abbenmarsh in the amount of $162,290 to provide professional engineering services for Phase 1 Fulton Avenue reconstruction project from Beech Tree to Albee Street, and authorize the city manager to issue a purchase order. The administration recommends approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
In support.
It's been moved and seconded, and Derek's already at the microphone.
Good evening, Your Honor. Derek Gatus, Public Works Director. Yes, so this is our engineering for our first phase of Fulton. That was awarded two grants, one federal, one state. So we were paying a whopping 4% of the road costs in this and the engineering. So, so yes, we're excited to get this going. And the grant cycle for the first grant, the category F, starts in October. So we want to bid it next winter and do a construction season in early spring. Abbenmarsh did a great job getting us a $336,000 category F grant through the MDOT, which they applied for a few years ago. You can't apply for them consecutively, my understanding is, but we were really close. So they sharpened their pencil for us, and we were awarded 1 of 10 in the state. So, yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
I think that we should support them gaining more grants for us.
It's all good.
It's been a good partnership.
Yeah. Anybody have questions for Derek or comments on?
I'm just glad to get this job done. I think it's a long time coming, so let's go for it.
Good.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's gonna be a traffic mess when we get started,
Yeah.
but it'll be all right.
Yeah, there's
They always are.
not much we can do about that, but
No. Oh, no.
do our best. How's that?
That's right.
Well, we
Good
had
job.
Beech Tree tore up once too, so
Yes.
we can make it work.
That's right.
Just part of the deal. So think how nice it is when it's done. Be an optimist.
Absolutely.
Right. So,
Yeah, no.
any other comments?
Yeah.
We're good to go. All right. Thank you.
Manetza?
Yes.
Bruger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes. All right. Moving. Next item.
This item is to adopt a defined contribution resolution with which the city adopts the 401A plan, a defined contribution agreement for full-time non-union employees, a defined contribution agreement for POLC command employees, a 457 program resolution with which the city adopts the MERS 457 plan, a 457 program participation agreement to allow city employees to invest in the 457 plan, and authorize the human resources manager or finance director to execute the necessary documents. The administration recommends approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And Bonnie,
Hi there.
it's a pleasure of explaining this all to us.
Yes, please.
I'm Bonnie Suchecki, your Human Resources Manager, and it's my responsibility to make sure that the benefits that we offer to our employees are good benefits and that we're good stewards of their funds. This process actually began about 6 months ago when I personally was looking at my investments that I have made through payroll deduction. Our employees currently have an option to invest in 3 separate areas. This is not pension. This has nothing to do with defined benefit. It is totally separate from that. Set that aside. That's not what this is, okay? Our employees, our non-union employees and our command employees have an option to participate in a 401 plan. If they choose to participate in that, it's a yes/no question, and I ask that question of all individuals who are potentially available to take advantage of that benefit every January 1 and every July 1. If the individual says, yes, I want that investment option, they are required to put 2% of their own money into that 401A plan, and the city matches that 2 with their own 2. So it's a 2-2. We have about 80% of the employees who are eligible for that benefit have taken advantage of it. There are about 20%. Every year I send out about a dozen letters to those individuals who have chosen not to participate and remind them you have the option. I send those letters out every 6 months. Okay? Those plans were in place before I arrived in July of 2009. So those are old benefits that have been in place for a significant amount of time. In addition to that, the IRS allows an investment option under the IRS tax code called a 457 plan. And a 457 plan this year allows an individual to put $19,000 away in a tax-free investment plan. The city doesn't match anything. The city's responsibility is solely to take the funds through payroll deduction, pre-tax dollars, and submit them to the company that provides us with that investment. In addition to that, and it's not on the plan because we don't need a signed document, our employees have the option to participate in a Roth IRA. That Roth IRA is after-tax money. Again, those investments are made on a personal basis. The individuals can choose, I want a Roth IRA or I don't. Because the funds go in after tax, the funds grow without tax implications. And when you draw your funds out, the money is not taxed at that point. Since, again, before I came in 2009, we have used ICMA as our investment provider. It's a company that's based in Washington, D.C. They have a 1-800 number that I can call for customer service. And they do have one individual in the state of Michigan who has been assigned to us. We are his account. He's not based locally. I have contacted him on a fairly regular basis. We bring him out to the city about twice a year, and he meets with our employees. He answers their questions. He gives them recommendations. He doesn't make recommendations of where to invest their money, but he does suggest to them it might be time for you to balance your funds or those kinds of recommendations. About 6 months ago, I was personally looking at my own investments, and I was sharing with a person who I trust, here's what my investments are and here's what I'm paying. And they said to me, you're paying an enormous amount of money in fees. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's exactly what I thought. What?
You shocked Denny.
And they said, we think you should take a look at this. We think you should take a look at lowering your fees. At about the same time, I got a phone call from our representative from ICMA who wanted me to know that he had retired 3 weeks ago. And I said, okay. And he said, and now ICMA has hired me back to introduce to you the new person who's going to take my job. And I said, okay. And he said, that person lives 2 hours farther away from Grand Haven than what I do. And I'd like to bring him out to meet you. And I said, wonderful. What afternoon would you like to come? And he said, well, I don't need an afternoon. I need 10, 15 minutes. We're going to walk in, shake your hand, and walk out. So that started me thinking, am I really providing the best option to my employees? So I started to do some research. What other options are there out there? And MERS, which is the company that does provide us with a number of benefits. It provides us with our defined benefit plan, our pension. That's a totally separate issue. It provides our employees with their health care savings plan, which all of our employees contribute to, which will provide employees with a long-term pool of money for them to be able to spend on medical expenses once they are no longer employed with the city. And it provides us with our retirement health savings vehicle, which is a mandated program that Jim can explain to you much better than I can, where we're putting money aside to cover those long-term liabilities that we have accrued through promises that we've made to our employees, primarily through retiree health care that is required as a part of the contracts that we have. So Jim and I went to MERS and asked them, could you take a look at what we're currently paying at ICMA And could you take a look at, if you were to provide similar benefits, they don't have exact product A and product A, but they have pretty darn close. They all have what they call target date funds, which are, if you're going to retire in 2020, this is the kind of investment mix that you want, so much stock, so much bond, so much fixed income. And they all have funds all the way out every 5 years, from 2020, 2025, 2030, that kind of thing. So we primarily compared those kinds of benefits. The cost, the returns are similar within a point or two, but the fee difference is 0.81%. And 81 basis points is a significant amount of fee, and the fee is paid by each individual employee out of their personal earnings. So Jim and I took a good hard look at that and said 0.81% is a pretty large number, and are we really being the best stewards on behalf of our employees by knowing this and not looking for an option for them that would be a better option as far as fees are concerned? So we sat down with Pat, we talked about what the differences were, what our recommendation is, and our recommendation is that we leave ICMA and we move the funds to MERS. It doesn't touch anything else that we have at MERS. MERS keeps everything in their own separate little pockets, and they'll continue to do so. MERS indicates to us that on a weekly basis, they're moving some municipality in the state of Michigan. MERS is based in Lansing. They're moving some municipality or organization in the state of Michigan from ICMA to MERS. They have a really close relationship. They do this often. So the first step in being able to do that is to ask City Council for the approval to open those identical plans at MERS that we have at ICMA. Then we will notify our employees that we are moving funds from ICMA to MERS, and we'll give them the full disclosure as to why and what the rates are and the rest of that. Over the course of an individual's lifetime career, almost an 0.8% difference in fees can be a significant amount of money. Obviously, the more you invest, the bigger the difference is. We have a number of employees that are in all three areas. We believe it's the best use of our time, support. Recommendation to our employees that we look to the company that can provide our employees with the best benefit, and the benefits, quite frankly, are almost identical. So the issue then is fees. If we can pay lower fees, and it's not the city, it has nothing to do with the city, it really doesn't. This is all about each individual employee. And I think at the beginning of my tenure here at the city back in 2009, I probably shared with you that my belief of my responsibility as a human resource person is that sometimes I'm to be the voice of management. Sometimes I'm to be the voice of the people. All the time I'm to be the conduit between the two. In this situation, I believe I'm being the voice of the people. Without them knowing, I don't think very many employees at all sit back and dig into this and try and figure out how much fees am I paying. They assume a 401 or a 457 or a Roth IRA is a 457 or a Roth IRA or a 401. If this is being offered by the city, I believe it's our responsibility to offer the best option. Thanks. There's this whole thing to do with fiduciary responsibility. Jim understands that much better than I do. And there's a second or a third point that I really do want to make, and that is that MERS is, because they are local, because they are within the state of Michigan, they are able to be much more responsive to our needs. I was approached by a couple of employees in the fall who said, we have a lot of new employees at the city, and some of them are at the earlier part of their career as opposed to the later part of their career. And we've had a lot of folks who could use some help figuring out how to budget, how to create a personal budget, how to identify what am I doing with my money, how to identify what could I be putting away if I were to make some different choices. And they said, could you provide some kind of program like that? So I contacted MERS and I contacted ICMA. Right now, we work with both companies. I try every time I'm doing something with this kind of process to contact both. MERS responded within a day with a phone call from the person who does education and said, I can come to you. I can offer early morning session, I can offer a lunch session, I can offer an evening session, and I can come however many times you need me to come. That person's coming on February 12 for a breakfast and lunch session, and again on February 26 for a breakfast and lunch session. The first session will be on personal budgeting and getting yourself to understand where your money goes. And the second session will be on investment options like this. What does it mean? What can I do? How do I do it? That kind of thing. ICMA, after 3 phone calls from me, responded with an email that said, we have a website. You could check that out and see if it'll do what you need. The City of Grand Haven, we provide to our employees the kind of service that our residents ask us to provide to them. And hey, check out a website just doesn't cut it for me.
All right. Well, it sounds like you delving into your own finances stumbled across something really...
Being as old as I am, Jerry.
So,
I did.
Yeah, no, it sounds like, you know, anytime you get to keep more of your own money, rather than give it away to somebody far away sounds like a good deal to me. And like you say, the return is pretty close to the same thing. It's all about the fees.
And I compared, we got a whole list of all of ICMA's returns, and we got a whole list of all of MERS returns, and we compared them to get as close to apples as we could. We might be comparing a Granny Smith to a Macintosh, but we're comparing as close as we can. And it was 0.81% is a lot.
Okay. Sounds like
25 years ago when I was on this side.
I think it's the right time.
Yeah.
If council will approve us making this shift, then coupled with the education that we're going to do in the month of February, we probably can make the shift by the end of March. So the timing is right. We'll get our employees thinking about what they're doing in their personal life and what they need to do. Our employees need to understand, it used to be, well, you got a pension plan and you'll get Social Security and that's enough. It's not. You need a 3-legged stool, a pension and Social Security, and what are you doing? And that's what I'm trying to begin education on, is that we all need to take some personal responsibility as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks for digging into that, Bonnie. I think that's, that's great service you did for the employees.
Anybody else have questions?
No, I'd just comment that, especially for the younger employees, that making them aware of what they need to do to get ready for retirement and building on it over a period of many, many years is so important, and it's so far away that they don't see it. Right. So that education piece is important, and then the indifference you got from ICMA is pretty striking. So that's not customer service. That says something all by itself. And yeah, I've seen my share of fees that I've paid on my retirement plans too. So that is quite important, and it does add up. So I think this is very good work. You're serving the employees well.
No, that whole, what is that, the miracle of compounding interest, is that the term?
Eighth wonder of the world?
Yes, if...
One of these slides that shows 2 green bars, and the top green bar has a little red spot on it, which is kind of cool.
Denny saw that one. That's what prompted him to say, where were you?
Yeah, this is the one. That's what we're looking at. When I saw that graphic, when the guy presented our stuff, I said, wait a minute, this is important. Now, this shows an individual who is earning $48,000 a year. He works for 30 years. All the other actuarial assumptions are set up. And rather than getting $307,000 through ICMA, it's $363,000 through MERS. If that doesn't tell you that this is something you need to look at closely, You don't know anything about investing and that kind of thing. So this was the key to say, wait a minute, there's something more here, we need to look more closely. When Bonnie was mentioning to me briefly a number of times, quite a number of times, that she was having difficulty having ICMA come out and support us, it was time for a change. We've had great support from MERS. It's not an easy process. There is a lot of technical data, and MERS walks us through it each time. So this is the kind of support that you're going to be offering your employees.
All right. Okay then, that's impressive. So I think we're ready to vote, unless somebody else has a comment.
Bruegger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes. All right, item D.
Next item is to explore the option of reducing the Crosswind Airport runway footprint. The administration recommends approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support?
It's been moved and seconded. Pat, you want to explain how we got to, first of all, the original agenda item and then the change?
Well, some years, a couple of years ago, the city council directed that we take a close look at the airport and coming up with a complete study of all of the possible futures out at the airport. And one of those possible futures could be something other than the airport occupying that real estate. Our local Chamber of Commerce has continued to keep that issue in the discussion. Just talking about the possibility for manufacturing expansion, and is there any availability of property on the margins of the airport to be used for redevelopment. So that is one of many questions that we're working to answer as we look at the airport. For many years, we've sort of run a model out there that we rent out the hangars to get just enough revenue to pay the bills, to pay the utility bills and pay the staffing needs that we have. So City Council wants to find a sustainable future, something that makes sense, and you'd like some answers. You'd like some research done and some answers. So the Chamber of Commerce came to you back in November, I believe, and said we'd like to study the possibility of what would a build-out look like at the airport if that reality were ever possible in the future as a data point. And the City Council said, well, you can go ahead and investigate that, possibly with some grant funding from the state. Well, the state came back and said they were willing to go 50% on such a study. As that discussion's going on, and we're looking for consultants to try to find out what such a study would cost to get the kind of information we would need to even begin to ask some of the very important questions that need to be asked. Whether it's a legal potential, a financial potential, a political potential. There's an awful lot of data that you would need in order to consider any of these options. It came up in the last several weeks, what about just the north-south runway? A couple of you council members brought that to my attention. Is that an option? So as we were getting this agenda ready, the mayor asked, why don't we get it out there for discussion? Get some agenda to engage in that discussion about just the crosswind runway. And then, at the time I wrote the original resolution, I was still thinking about that study, the overall study, and coming up with some match money. The reason I said let's take that off the table for now is I think we ought to forego that discussion for now. It looks like the type of study we would need would be far more expensive than the kind of numbers we're talking about. Some of the feeling we're getting back from consultants that have done this kind of work, it suggests that the money is much higher than what MEDC is willing to help us with. So I'm thinking about putting that on the side and just presenting just this question. Do you want us to look at the north-south runway and start to ask the questions, what is the legal requirement that we have at the airport, and what are the political wins, and what are the financial possibilities? I haven't even started to ask those questions, so I've got nothing to tell you now, but if you pass this resolution tonight, we'll start looking into that, and we're not planning on hiring anybody. We will work in-house to just begin to go to Lansing and talk to the Department of Transportation, and begin to discover answers to bring back to you with some information. But I think City Council ought to start that process. I don't think staff ought to be out, spending valuable time on projects that City Council doesn't think have legs. I'm not out there looking into closing a runway at the airport unless you tell me you want me to look into that.
Okay, one of the things that, the first thing that, the MEDC, through becoming a redevelopment-ready community, they were willing to help us with a study. The bad thing, that was a good thing. Bad thing about it is that it's a one-shot deal. You got one study, and the question then became, do you want to use it on something that that is not a sure thing? It's something that you're just, you're looking at possibility of futures, and you don't know exactly where it's going to go, where it's going to lead. And so then as the actual price came in, going, well, do you really want to do this at all, or are there other options, that we can look at the airport? So that was one option, that to look at that crosswind runway or the north-south runway was one thing that is a possibility. From my understanding, I haven't seen numbers, but told it's not used very often, and it takes up quite a bit of property, and not only the property for the runway itself, but the approach at either end. So if it would be a possibility to take a look at that, whether that's even possible, it would break free from some land and solve some problems of neighbors trying to do some expansion. So it's something that I would be interested in looking at, and it is a beginning, as Jeff said earlier. Is that even legal? That is something that's part of the process of looking into all the questions of the airport, is what's legal, or what's expected from those folks that have given us money to work at the airport, and is it feasible? Is it the one thing of looking at, well, what is that? What's the value of the property at the airport if it's other than an airport? And then you face that question with, okay, what if you lose the airport? What are you losing? And it's an emotional question as well as a financial question. So instead of looking at it that way, if they're at the cost of what that study was going to cost, you look at, well, okay, what other options are available to you? Is this a viable option? We don't know, because we haven't asked the question. And so this is a stab at, well, let's look at finding out. How much is that runway used? Would we get permission to be able to close it? And so it's a place to start looking as what some possibilities are. So that's all this is to take a look. What are the possibilities? So, and we can do it in-house, so there isn't a huge expense, and we don't blow our opportunity at one help from being a redevelopment-ready community on something that's speculative, very speculative, rather than saving it for something that's more of a for sure thing. So that's kind of a long way around as to why I'm interested in this, or why I was interested in exploring the airport in the first place, and also interested in this scaled down look at what are the possibilities out there. So if anybody else wants to weigh in as to what your thinking is, that would be appreciated.
I guess, I was never in favor of doing a full-blown study on the full airport, but on the north-south runway, I am. But we've had bus drivers that have seen planes going way too close to the road when they're landing on that runway, and they have to be that low to get that approach. I have a letter from one, and I had another one, a letter from the other one. I didn't bring it, but anyways, very concerned about how close those airplanes come on Comstock to the height of the buses. and that is a short runway. And so, and I'm in, as long as we limit the scope to the north-south runway, I don't have a problem with it. I would have a problem if it went any further than that. So I'm not opposed to the study on the north-south runway. Also, I have a friend that I have coffee with, and he said they landed on that one time and they got awful close to the end of that runway. He was not the pilot, but he was right next to the pilot, and he was very concerned about coming to the end of it. So it's a short runway, and I think the smaller planes, what I've told, the smaller planes can land on it, but the larger planes can't. So I guess I'm not against studying the north-south runway and seeing what we can come up with. And but as long as we're limited to the scope just to the north-south runway, I can live with that.
Well, when this came up before and the chamber came to us and asked about doing a study of the potentially turning this into real estate that could be used for industrial purposes, I was very pointed and direct about asking how this was being paid for. It was going to be, the study would be paid for with grant funding, not with general fund money, or the investment of the city would be doing legwork and applying for the grant. And I thought that was okay because not bad questions to be asking, and the city wasn't going to invest a lot in it. And at that time and since then, with the recent memo that Pat sent us about the nature of these studies, it sounds to me like this has every bit as much viability as their study of the seawall at Linwood Sherwood Stadium. In other words, very little chance of it actually amounting to anything other than spending a lot of time and effort on study. So I'm not opposed to asking these questions. I think these questions need to include all of the questions that Jeff brought up. I think that there's enormous obstacles and obligations, and there's probably little chance it'll make a whole lot of difference on how the airport continues as an airport. If you're going to continue as an airport, I can see the value of having that north-south runway, so abandoning it and having the one runway is probably not viable either. But there again, I'm not opposed to asking the question and getting the information, provided the questions are thorough and well-vetted and complete answers and not just our wishful thinking about the value of turning this into real estate. So I'm in support of this. If this had included the original wording of sticking more money into a study, I would have voted no. As long as it's going to be minimal effort on the part of staff and not turn into a gigantic effort and a lot of expense, then I think we should probably pursue asking questions. Still a lot of options with the airport. The airport has a good level of viability, a good level of ability to continue as an airport. It's never going to be a money maker for the city, nor was it ever intended to be. I think it was intended to be an amenity for the city. So it has value. And I think that asking questions about what to do with the land is not a bad thing to ask. I just don't want to see us investing a lot of time, effort, and money into studies that will probably take us nowhere. So I'll vote for this. I wouldn't have voted for the extra money.
Well, I will say I'm probably one of the few on council, maybe not, who is in favor of the full-on study and in favor of the city budget or city general fund supporting that study financially. I understand the mayor's concerns with this $25,000, and given that information that it's a one-time deal and it's probably just a drop in the bucket, I think we need to shake some more trees and see if we can find some more money to support that study. Anytime we can leverage our grant money from outside of the city, that's great, so I'm in favor of that first and foremost. I think the study of the entire airport property is very important to the long-term health and vitality of the city. I think the airport is wonderful, but I look at that much acreage and the question of that much acreage and what could be done with that, whether the highest and best use of that piece of property is for the airport that serves a few versus industrial development or housing or something else that could serve many taxpayers in the city of Grand Haven. I think that's something that we have a responsibility to look into. And I want to note that the first question that the chamber proposed to ask is the payback provisions and what happens with the amount of money that we've borrowed from the federal and state government. We don't know. I don't know exactly how much that is. I'm sure it's a calculation we can figure out fairly easily. It's somewhere between the 9,000 we added to it tonight, the 300 and some thousand we added last year, and whatever we've added each year after that. So it could be $5 million that we owe to get out of it. It could be $10 million. But I look at the math, and if we, with that much acreage, could create 200 jobs, which I think is probably a low number given how much property is out there, 200 jobs that pay $50,000 a year on average, that's $10 million a year in employment opportunity for residents in the city of Grand Haven. And if it costs us $10 million to get out of that in 1 year, we can bring in jobs that'll pay that amount of money. And I think that's significant to provide jobs for residents in the city of Grand Haven. I think this smaller version, I'm very much in favor, if that's got some more support, to do this shorter version, shorter study of the north-south runway. There are 2 businesses, if not more, that are looking at expanding their operations to create more jobs so that they can stay in the city of Grand Haven. And that north-south runway is a hindrance as far as their ability to do that and to create more jobs. So I put this in the big picture of things. It's a piece of property. Is it being used for the highest and best use? Is it creating the most opportunity for the most citizens in the city of Grand Haven? I don't personally believe that it is right now as an airport. I'm open to that. I think this full-on study is going to show light on that. But short of that, I'm very much in favor of this smaller version of a look from city staff at the north-south runway. So I'm excited to see that done, and I hope that it's just the tip of the iceberg of possibilities for the city. Thanks.
Oh, good. Not too far in the past, if you remember, there was a lot of empty buildings out there at one time, and we did change some of the wordings for the zoning out there so we could get some businesses to come out into the airport area. And a good example, if you haven't been reading and watching the news a whole lot lately, you see where GM and all them are closing a lot of factories. And to give up property to build for factories, it's not a guaranteed thing that they're going to be there forever. Businesses don't last forever. When my dad grew up, you could work in a business and you could stay there for 40, 50 years and expect to retire from there. But today you work 10 or 15 years and sometimes that business moves on and there's nothing there. You're always looking for something else. I think we have an obligation. I think Mr. Beswick here has made a good point for us to find out what are our costs for that. The first question is, what is our obligations? I mean, none of us really know what our total obligations are. That'd be the first thing I want to know before I even agree to anything. I want to know what my obligations are to do anything on this, or besides looking at how we're going to close this down. I'd like to know first what the costs are, and what we're obligated to before we even worry about trying to close it. Can we close it? That'd be the next question. Can we legally close it or not? We have a lawyer and we pay, so I mean, Pat, you could probably call and get a few answers and put together for us. I'm not in favor of any of this right now, to be honest with you, until I get some options. I'm not going to bend over for businesses. I see them come and go. I've seen developers come, and I've seen what they produce and what they don't produce. I just want to know what our obligations are and what it's going to cost.
To me, it's part of the process, and you have to start asking the questions. That's you don't get answers until you start asking the questions. So this, to me, is a way to answer questions. It's not making a decision to do one thing or another. It's pretty much a process of asking questions in order to know that you're going to make a good decision down the road. So
that's the question I ask: is what the obligations are and what are financial costs. That'd be the first start.
Right.
Do we have to have a resolution to do that? Pat can just tell Pat to go ahead and let us know ahead of time before we start worrying about if we can do this or not. We don't even know. Just go ahead.
Well, that's the wording of the question, is that to explore the option So in exploring the option, you're gonna be asking those questions, so that's
I just wanted the
part of
answers.
the process. Okay.
And I hope that the level of discussion and the caution that you're all showing in your commentary is you understand why I'm cautious. You know, I'm not gonna go out and start calling people up and say, why don't we shut down the marina? Why don't we shut down the musical fountain? Why don't we close the beach? Why don't we close the airport? It's not something, you hire me to run these things and to do a good job of them. And so when the possibility comes up, when I hear it from one or two sources in the community, from our business community, I come to you and say, do you want me to ask these questions? To pay the attorney to help me answer these questions, that's something I think I ought to, get your green light, and that's what I'm asking for tonight. We're not gonna spend any money. We'll have to pay the attorney when we ask them the question. They don't work for free. But there will likely be several meetings and discussions and an inquiry that I'll tap. It's one thing that your staff does know how to do is to ask questions and bring those answers back to you, and that's all I'll do if you vote yes on this.
I think
We have
that's,
to do.
Yep, that's it, that's,
and I think, Mike's comment is kind of in line with what I said as well, that we can ask these questions. I don't want to turn into a big study because I frankly don't think it'll end up being very positive answers to your questions, but it doesn't hurt to ask. I keep thinking about how much money we invested in the seawall at Lynn Sherwood Stadium, and that went nowhere. We finally pulled the plug on that one.
$28,000.
Yes.
the seawall is still there, still needs to be fixed. State of Michigan.
But we wanted to run it out there a few more feet. and that-
Yeah, still
I got a
do.
firm no for no obvious reason.
But we did learn that there are some bicycles and clams in the riverbed.
Yeah, well, so, we did get answers to questions.
Yes.
It all-
One of those was
it all-
Mike Fritz's old Schwinn.
And I can tell you what else is down there too from the years I've been down there from when I was growing up.
We didn't have to pay money for
I don't
that.
want to own too much detail there, Mike.
And you gotta remember, my family had their fishing boat down there too, so I can tell you a whole lot more stuff that's buried down there.
I don't know, the Dutch are all about reclaiming water, so I don't see where the big hang-up is for the channels.
We digress.
Doesn't have to be quite that wide. We sure could use the space. More skaters. Okay, anyway, so I think we're ready to vote on this particular item.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
No.
Manetza?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
McCaleb?
Yes. All right, next item.
Item is under unfinished business. This is to approve a final resolution amending Article 3, Section 40-307 of the Grand Haven zoning ordinance concerning clear vision corners to add new subsection D. The Planning Commission and the administration recommend approval.
All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Or, okay, we had Jennifer explain to us the last time we were here, so we just have to vote on this again.
Anything changed or any comments from any, no feedback from anybody?
This is so we can see around corners.
And as I said, the Planning Commission voted unanimously for it.
Yep.
So.
We're ready to vote, I think.
Fritz?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
McCaleb?
Yes. And item B.
Next item is to approve a final resolution rezoning 2, 4, 12, and 100 North Beech Tree Street from transitional industrial to Beech Tree zoning district. The Planning Commission and the administration recommend approval.
Okay. This is also the second vote on this particular item. And anybody have any questions? This rezones?
So moved.
I'll support
Yes.
the revolution.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry.
There you go.
Seconded?
Josh, I'm going to support your revolution.
Hmm.
I think that's what you said there, Linda.
Exciting.
I think there's an O and an R missing in
Yeah,
formal.
right. Oh,
That's
look at
okay.
that. Yeah.
That's,
That must have
it's good.
Vernal?
The Fernal.
Final
Oh,
resolution.
it's final. Oh, whatever that infernal resolution.
We're getting a little
Okay.
punchy.
It's too warm in
Still
here,
support
that's
it.
why.
Me too.
All right, any other, this is vote number 2 on,
No changes, no comments?
No changes, no comments.
all right, we're ready to vote.
Manetza?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Fritz?
Yes.
McCaleb?
Yes. All right, on to, that was our last item, on to report by city council. Who wants to start? Denny had a whole week off.
It's still up for 2 days. It's still.
And then it's gonna ice and sleet, so you just put that on for weeks, no
Thanks a lot,
school for
Jerry.
weeks.
Yeah. Really, estimate. Yeah. Well, pessimistic there, aren't you?
I just want it to snow. It's winter, we should have snow on the ground.
I'll bring you mine.
We had some, it was great for Winter Carnival, thank you for snowing on Winter Carnival. Now it's all gone, and my brother's coming next week and he wants to see snow, so come on, snow.
You'll get snow.
Okay.
For a little while.
Or sleet.
Or whatever.
I suppose since I'm on a roll, I could keep going.
You're doing good, Mayor.
I am
Keep it
I'm
up.
supposed to be last.
I don't have anything tonight, Jerry.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really have a report. I'm just glad it warmed up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, it was chilly.
Well, I did notice that Bob's got a big hole in his front yard, so.
Yeah, not my front yard.
Well,
my
actually, in the
neighbor.
street area, neighbor's yard.
Yeah, they're one of those. They were showing me one of those sections of leaded pipe that they pulled out of the ground.
Oh, yeah, I had
About
one.
that long, just a piece of lead.
I was just gonna make a comment on that at my place, that, believe it or not, the water line goes down through my property, and the shut-off valve for my neighbor is in my back of my property. Well, what happens is, the shut-off valve, the pipe sits up above the ground. Well, I plow in that area,
Oh, no.
not knowing that was there. So I knocked it all off, so they came down and fixed it. They did a fantastic job. I gotta say, our DPW guys are good, but they're trying to figure out, why is the neighbor's shut-off valve doing in my property? It should be on their property, and it should be toward the front of their building and not in the back of my building. And I said, well, it goes back a long story, but I'll tell you what, our DPW guys did a fantastic job. They came in, fixed it, and I did see one of those nice little leaded goosenecks on there, and they put all copper in, did a fantastic job, so kudos to our guys there. I really appreciate having cross-trained all our employees to work with water. I think, how many years has that been happening now? I know when I first got in, they weren't doing that, and then
10 or 12 years now.
and we've been cross-training them. I thought that was a good addition for it, and now we don't have to worry about it. The guys that are working on the job can go in and go on it right away. Don't have to wait for a certain individual to come in to do the tapping and fixing of the water line. So thanks to management here and us, and seeing in the future that we can utilize our employees in a better way, and educating them, making sure that they do a fantastic job is a good way of doing things. So thanks again, Pat. I know I was one of the ones wanted to educate as much as we possibly can, and that's what has really happened. So
Worked out well for us, it really has.
it sure has.
So are we keeping track of these? We got 2 of them already that we're doing, yeah, so we should.
That we're hitting them off right away since we passed that 500.
Yeah, don't let us lose track of the ones we're doing.
That's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say thank you to the DPW guys and that, and their hard work that they've been doing, and especially even through this cold weather and all, you think more pipes would freeze and everything else, but that's not really how it happens. It's just after it thaws and everything else happens. And being on a big sand dune like that, our whole dune is moving, and our pipes will break, and it doesn't have to be cold. It can be in the middle of summer or any time like that, because this is one big dune, so.
And they're out there working in the dark of night, getting stuff done.
Oh, and they're out there, and that water was just gushing out of there.
I saw it.
And it was not fun for them. And some of those valves haven't been turned for years, Denny.
Really?
Yeah, they had a fun time with it, but they did a good job. So I want to say thank you to all our employees for pitching in and working hard through this past week.
Right along.
And Mike's right, the valves haven't been turned in years. When I worked there, we didn't have a program to turn our valves, and we've developed a program to do that, and to also flush our water lines, and things are improving, getting better. And the Public Works Department did a great job in clearing snow, and I think they did a fantastic job. However, I've seen some catch basins that were blocked up, and I did report them, and I'm a little concerned because we got rid of our backhaul, and we don't have that anymore. And I know the VACCON, it can do the job, but I don't think that's a very expensive machine to clean catch basins with.
Yes.
So, and if we let those catch basins go, especially, we're putting more salt or sand on the road now than we used to. We used to put a lot more salt on the road, but we're using a lot more sand. And when that sand gets in the catch basin and builds up in the lines, it gets in the line, it's going to be harder to clean out. So I would, and when I was at the city, there was other people that I talked to from different locations and they worked for different cities, and they didn't have a good program cleaning out catch basins. And when they had hard rains and they had a big snow melt, they had problems with flooding, and I don't want to see that happen with Grand Haven. So I would like to see, actually, I'd like to see a VACCOL come back. I think that's a lot of I just don't think that's proper use of VACCON. VACCON's a very expensive machine for cleaning sewers and lift stations, and it does help with water breaks too. But to clean catch basins with all that torpedo sand and to blast the inside of one, it takes the life out of it. Takes life out of everything. But that's a very expensive machine to be using, in my opinion, for that. So that's my comment.
All right. I guess it's to me. Or did, yeah, okay.
I suppose.
Well, like I said, I hope we get some more snow. I know that doesn't, think of all the guys that buy these plows and they never get to use them if it doesn't snow. So Michigan, it's winter. I don't want to see green grass. So besides, it's a mess in my backyard. So I had a great time at Winterfest. Cardboard sled races were awesome, as always. You know, they just made mincemeat out of the bales of hay at the bottom of the hill. It was awesome to see. Yeah, I love it, watching exploding bales of hay. So anyway, had a good time and did a little bit of hibernating. Reminded me of my Minnesota days at 20 below. And I was going to go somewhere, and I thought, and nobody's open, so why bother? So I stayed home. So it's been an interesting week, not a whole lot going on. And at that point, I'm going to send it over to Pat for the city manager's report and his talking about our depot.
Thank you. I'd start out by saying that had I known we were going to have people here that were interested in this item, I wouldn't have put it very last thing on the agenda. So I apologize for you guys getting to enjoy. Okay, well. I brought before you, for some time now, I guess I've been trying to gently suggest that we could really use a tenant in that building to help us pay the bills. Right now, it's empty just about all the time, and it's probably time for me to bring you a tenant and just ask you to vote on it and see what I get. But I would rather do that with some level of consensus. So I would just ask that you consider, I put together a little memorandum in your packet that sort of listed out some pros and cons that were just some of your staff talking among ourselves about what the different pluses and minuses were of different tenants. You can probably come up with many more from your policy perspective than we could from staff. But I'm going to, I was talking to Denny today, and I think he came up with a pretty good idea to help me get something on your next agenda. When you do your goal setting, you do some rank ordering, and maybe we could work on that. I'll send you out an email tonight just asking you to give me some feedback to let me rank these so that I think I bring you the tenant that you most prefer as a group. That's not always an easy thing to do. And then I'll just have it on the agenda next time for approval of a lease agreement with a tenant to occupy that place. And we're calling this an interim tenant because we've got a great aspiration to make a big investment in that building. But that's going to take some time. Patience that you were talking about earlier. We're going to have to, first, just working with the architect is taking us considerable time. Of course, we went through the entire process working with your historic preservation community. They had a lot to say. The architect's going to have a lot of information to give us that will show you what the cost concepts are. That's probably going to take us a couple years to get something in place that makes a lot of sense and is going to hold up forever, because I think you want to keep that building forever. So as we're going through this process, I just hate seeing the building sitting empty. So we call this an interim tenant, we get somebody in there, very high probability that that tenant, should they be successful, would be the tenant that we would then look to stay in there as our anchor going forward, because I've heard loud and clear from you, and I had a picture I was gonna put up there tonight, and I apologize, I meant to give it to Ashley, maybe if I emailed it to her. It was a picture of that December night in 2016, when you all came down to the depot, and we sat with the museum board and did a visioning charrette. And you spent a couple hours that night of your personal time, and then following up on that month after month, talking about things, and it coalesced into a definite shared vision of about a third of that building being occupied by an anchor tenant, and the other 2/3 being available as public space to be used for a variety of things, and that's the direction we're heading in. So you know what those 5 uses are. Those 5 proposed uses are ice cream, distillery, coffee, brewery, and donuts. The donut option, I think, is not advisable because of the indoor frying of donuts. Would likely give that, think about a room like this and frying donuts in here 10 hours a day for a long period of time, what the condition of this space might be, what it might smell like. Donuts are great, but they need to be fried in a kitchen with a big vent and a significant commercial kitchen. The other one, that the brewery, they're making other plans. They're moving very rapidly in a much different direction. So I think we're really talking about 3 potential users: ice cream, coffee, or distillery. You've heard from some of them, and I would ask you to, if you could respond fairly quickly, I'll send you out. I'm hoping that you've already had significant time to think about this, because I've rolled it out in front of you on a number of occasions. I guess, if you want to give me direction tonight, but if you're more comfortable with responding to a survey, and I am, we're going to have an open meetings, come to Jesus moment, I'll disclose everything I get. The rankings that I get, any feedback that I get from you will be discussed in an open meeting, but if you need time to ponder and submit your written comments, I'll take those and fashion them into a recommendation at your next meeting.
Sounds good?
You shake your head. Yeah, okay.
Okay?
Okay. Whatever.
I was gonna sit here and say ice cream and look at all of you, try to judge by the looks on your faces, but.
No, Pat, it's after 9
It's after
o'clock.
9.
No, there's no ice cream now.
Ice cream's gone.
Hey,
The
if we
distillery
get done
might
before
still be
9
open
o'clock,
after
you gotta
9.
buy ice cream.
I think the brew pub's still open. The final thing I wanted and I don't know if there was any more discussion, it didn't sound like there was going to be, so do you mind if I go on to the next?
Go right ahead.
Oh, you're on a roll.
The small space off to the side, the concession, for lack of a better word. When we first built it, we thought we were going to be renting out chairs out of that space. After our first season of using that space, I don't know if that's really something that we're going to need to do. People seem very comfortable bringing their own chairs down to the new stadium space. And I don't see there being a real upside to having a chair rental business going out of that area. Again, same thing. I hate to see that valuable space sitting vacant. You've paid for it, and you're paying for it. Every time I went into it, I made sure we were trying to keep the air conditioning properly zoned so we weren't cooling that space. But we still do have to pay for it. It sits there and it's not being used 98% of the time. So what I'd like to do, and in the very last page in your packet tonight, was something Ashley Latch expertly put together. Again, she did a fabulous job of a presentation that we could farm out to all of our existing tenants down on the waterfront. Say, do you have an interest in that space? So we're not competing directly with them by leasing out space that would compete with them when we're leasing them other space. So we will ask them all to consider putting in a proposal that I would then bring to you for approval in March. But again, the May, June, July, August, that space is just sitting there, and we've got people, big crowds of people who would probably appreciate the opportunity to maybe, whether it's a slice of pizza or a donut or a pop or an ice cream, that might be a very good thing to have going on there, and I think it's a waste to, and Jerry pointed something out, we have to avoid looking like we're guilty of doublespeak, because we told people at the outset we weren't going to put a concession in there. So I think we'd want to make it real clear, there's been a change in course, we decided we didn't need it for chair and umbrella rental, but to use that space to its fullest benefit, you know, I think it seems silly to me to just leave it sitting there with those big overhead roll-up windows and nothing going on in there, so I would think we could do something in there. So I'd like to bring you some proposals, and we've got a RFP ready to go out, and if you seem to be nodding, so I'm gonna send that out and see what kind of feedback we get. It's 4-1 on the nods.
No, I think one of the key, the folks who are objecting softly or loudly to having concessions down there were our local merchants and fear of losing business. So I think you're approaching it the right way. If we offer to them the first opportunity to present something, I think that's the right way to go about it. And, you know, also paired with the things have changed, we don't need it for this, and we've got vacant space that has an opportunity to earn revenue and bring more people downtown. Same can be said for the other vacant space. Let's generate some money on behalf of the taxpayers, create some jobs, and bring some people downtown. I'm nodding.
In the interest of being very open and fair and speaking with the mayor today, she pointed out maybe we ought to open it up to everybody, not just our tenants. So that, you know, because I think we probably told some other people we weren't gonna rent it out either, so. And then you guys might decide based on your own values that you'd prefer to rent to one of our existing tenants than somebody who's not, but that's up to you to decide. So I think we'll open it up to any comers that want to put in a proposal, but we'll certainly make sure all of our tenants get a direct email with an opportunity to submit a bid.
When you said our tenants, I actually was thinking collectively every business downtown is kind of, but they're not really. I see what you're.
Yeah, I was talking about.
You're thinking
Thank
local,
you.
local
Yeah.
businesses.
I was thinking local businesses.
Local businesses.
I really see the dilemma you're in because we did also tell them that when we did build it, you're absolutely correct. We did tell everybody down there that we're not gonna be in competition with any of them down there with it. And I'm a man of my word, and I don't want to be in any competition of any of our tenants or any of the businesses down there. If we're gonna bring another business in to the other end, we gotta make sure before we even do something at that end, that it coincides along with what we said and what we wanna do. I don't feel right when I said that we weren't gonna do that, and now we're gonna turn around and do it. It just doesn't feel good to me.
Well,
I'm a man of stature. When I say something, I wanna stand behind it, and I usually do. And so, before we even worry about a small little space and whatever it is, we made a promise to them down there when we built that we weren't gonna do this. That's just my opinion.
I pointed that out at the outset.
That's why I shook my head no.
Okay. And I did point that out at the outset, that was my concern, and that's why I'm bringing it to you. And by opening it up to all of them, you know, it's like, well, compete, you know, it's a free, open market, and we've got valuable space, and so.
Well, if the invitation is to local businesses and particularly to our tenants, I think that we've gone that extra bit. It's not what we thought, but we're making an effort to make it right.
And I understand what Mike is saying there. My hard time with it is we've got property that's costing us money, and I don't know, there's not a lot of it. We just went through all of our debts this morning.
Seemed like this morning.
Like
that.
that.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, put some extra revenue in there and bring in more, anyway, yeah, whatever. I see his point, but yeah.
When we started out, I mean, it was gonna be, you know, like skates or chairs or whatever, and, you know, and as we've seen how things worked out, okay, that's not gonna, we don't have a skating rink today, and we find we don't need, you know, to rent out chairs. So it's, you know, the question then becomes, what is it? And that's why I said, if we're going to do that, then we have to talk to everybody we talked to and said, you know, we didn't, and give them an opportunity that we don't go back, you know, that if circumstances change, it's not like going back on your word. It's like saying, well, you know, circumstances have changed. Are you interested? So I think that's a.
So what would be the profit on renting chairs or skates? You know, there was no profit there.
It wasn't a profit. It was providing a service.
There was no income, really.
No, it was providing a service for the use of the stadium. So if you're not going to do that, well, and if everybody votes not to do it, then we won't do it.
Whatever.
If we want to make an opportunity, a business opportunity.
See what we're going to get in there. See what we get in the rest of the building.
Yeah.
I guess another choice might be to make sure that what you put in there is not duplicated anywhere else in downtown, so that you're not competing.
Yeah.
if you could come up with a use which is not existing, that might be tough in a seasonal setting like that. Maybe fireworks concession.
You got your fireworks, you can sell fireworks. You got your work cut out for you, Pat.
Thank you. Maybe donuts.
Donuts.
Or
deep fried
doobies.
donuts.
Wait and see.
Praline pecans rather than going outside. Okay. All right, well, let's give it some thought and talk to our neighbors and see what transpires. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. In that case, it's general business. Call the audience. Second opportunity to say, if you want to make a comment.
After being here for the meeting, I'll just say, my name's Kyle Van Streen from Long Road Distillers. Thank you again for this opportunity to be here tonight to share just briefly. I know we've spoken with a few of you. I just want to offer you the opportunity to come visit us in Grand Rapids at our tasting room there. If you have questions, we're open to talking with you, and we'll leave business cards if you need to get a hold of us if you don't know how to. But we're thrilled about the opportunity. We hope to join the community and invest here and become a part of your community. So thank you again.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? If not, we will adjourn.